Okay, let's get things underway. Thanks everyone for joining us. Let's get this webinar going because we've got what promises to be a real cracker in store this evening. So in this final webinar of three, we're turning the focus to our support crews. And to help us out this evening, we've got three outstanding individuals to provide us with their respective perspectives. So more on them in a second, but let me commence the webinar by just acknowledging this brilliant country in which we all reside. And I especially want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands in which we're located this evening, and give us a special mention to the lands in which we run our Coast To Kosci Ultramarathon, those of the Yuin and the Ngarigo people, and just pay my respects to elders past, present, emerging, and to celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal people and their ongoing cultures and their connections to the lands, the mountains, and the waters of Australia. So I'm going to start off. We just need to do a quick update. So Greg, I might hand it over to you. I've
Thanks,
just
Mickey.
pulled together a slide so you can use that if you want.
Okay. Look, the couple of I just want to share probably 3 points because we've had a few questions over recent weeks on a couple of things. Um, First thing is in the next week, 10 days or so, we'll send out forms to the runners, online web forms via email, which will include information we need to capture and record, your crew chief name and contact number, ideally the names of your support crew and contact details, preferably your vehicle make, and also the registration number. And we understand some people won't have the vehicles because they may be hiring them, but we'll need to get that later. The key reasons for that is so that we know who is on course and what vehicles are on course and what vehicles are part of the official race and which ones aren't. In addition to that, we'll also be asking people for attendees just the number that goes with breakfast and also payment for breakfast. Some people choose to stay elsewhere or different locations. We do have a large breakfast, but it's optional. But we need to ask for numbers. Normally we have around 200, 180 to 220. What we'll do this year, which is different, is we will provide you tickets. So let's say you say, I've got 5 people for breakfast, you'll pay for those, and we'll provide the entry tickets for breakfast in your runner bag. In previous years, it's just been an honesty system. And what we've found out is, we've ordered 180 breakfasts and apparently we've had 225 people magically turn up and have come from different parts and places. And it just hurts the viability of the event. So we just need to be a bit clear about that. So apologies that we've got to change the process, but it's just a bit unfortunate because we have people turn up who indulge in breakfast, which is all good, but unfortunately don't pay for it. So we'll send that out to you. Just a couple of other things just on first aid principles. We have first aid race officials. One of those this year is Jane Trumper. Jane sends her apologies tonight, but just a couple of points to share with you. We do encourage you in your support crews to preferably have someone who's qualified in first aid or with a high medical qualification. Should you require any first aid more than what your crew can provide during the race, we ask you to use the crew chief WhatsApp to contact race officials and or race medics, and you'll have their numbers. And in doing so, advise where you are, what your runner needs, etc., and location, so they can make contact with you, assess, and work through the situation. You'll also note that anything more serious than first aid, we will direct you, and the first aid people will direct you to a medical facility. And your race rules on the final page has the list of the medical facilities along the race route. Note there's only 2 hospitals, Bega, which is relatively close to Eden, and Cooma, which is really sort of more towards the second half of the race. Just to clarify, there is no hospital in Jindabyne. There are only medical facilities open during normal hours. Those 2 hospitals on the route are aware we are coming through as an event, and should anyone present at the hospital, if you tell them you're undertaking an ultramarathon event, they will know that you're coming through and should be ready to treat you should that unfortunate situation occur. So the key points: basic first aid. Anything more, go to a medical facility, and the hospitals are on standby. So please make smart calls again around that. The third thing to update you on is just on multiple vehicles. A couple of people have asked questions about multiple vehicles. Look, it is stated in the race rules, and specifically to be technical, 3.2.4 and 3.2.5. To be really clear, you are only allowed one active support vehicle at any given time during the race. If you wish to change a crew, i.e. replace one vehicle with another vehicle, that is allowed. However, we have to have those details, and you have to advise us that you are doing so, and you can only do that at a mandatory checkpoint. Okay. The additional piece that goes with that is if you do have two vehicles, they're not allowed to meet up on course. And if you just apply the basic logic, everyone is going in more or less with the same constraints. Some people have a little bit more crew, those sorts of things. An additional vehicle changes the game and can offer substantially more help. It's also important that we don't have a large number of vehicles on course that we're not aware of, or at multiple times. We have permits that only allow for a set number of vehicles. So just to be really clear, you're only allowed one active support vehicle at any given time. If you intend to use two crew vehicles, you may swap those vehicles, but only at a mandatory checkpoint, and only if you have advised race officials and details are recorded. Okay. As part of that, again, we strongly recommend four-wheel drive vehicles. Again, we had a question on this the other day from a runner. You will remember, those who've been a part of the race in recent years, we've had, to be blunt, shit weather. Last year we had multiple creek crossings, and four-wheel drive is strongly recommended. We've not yet made that mandatory, but we keep looking at that on a yearly basis. And given a number of the roads are in good condition but do have soft edges, again, four-wheel drive is strongly recommended. And then the last piece, again, questions emanate. Jawbone conducting earphones are permitted. You are allowed to have those. You're not allowed to utilize standard headphones, Beats, AirPods, anything. However, you are allowed to use jawbone conducting earphones. All right. And if you need any clarification on which ones apply and which ones don't, just reach out to us on that. All right. The key thing is you need to be able to hear traffic. All right. And that's really important. Again, the example I use is someone coming home from the Dalgety pub at midnight, not expecting to see a runner on the road, and they're traveling at speed, which may or may not be at the speed limit. All right. You need to be able to hear that vehicle and be well aware of your own personal safety and that of your crew as well. So that's just, I suppose, the quick update from us. And with that, I'll pass back to you, Mickey.
Cheers, Greg. Good on you. And by the way, this is getting recorded, guys, so you can refer to it later on, especially all those people that are putting the AI chat across it. Good luck with bloody interpreting my accent. So I'm really looking forward to tonight because, as I said at the very outset, we've got three outstanding individuals. Let me just introduce the first one of those. And that's Greg's wife, Julie Wallace. And Julie counts herself as an experienced support crew member. She's successfully crewed for the man 5 times. The first one was a huge eye-opener. And she's crewed in many other kind of self-supported endurance events. She's become an expert in managing many aspects of runner care, from logistics to emotional support. Definitely. I've managed to witness that firsthand. Handling medical supplies, blister care, hydration, nutrition, sleep contingencies. And she now understands the unpredictable challenges that come with ultra running. That's including the mental and the physical highs and lows, and through a well-selected team, she can help runners navigate these moments to stay on track. So that's Julie. Thanks for joining us tonight, Julie. Good on you. The next person I want to introduce is Jesus, this girl can talk. Well, she can type as well. And
So that'll be Alice then.
No.
it is indeed Jacqueline Gaffey, otherwise known as Jay Gaffey. Jay ended up being a dentist when she left school. She's the home of the Big Book of British Smiles. But then she did weird endurance stuff at the British Army. And you'll find out a little bit about that later on. And she found she had to get a civvy bus when she immigrated. So maybe I'll just reinterpret that. Her civilian highs she needed to get. So she did the Tree Chimnoy 102 kilometres. She came second in her age group and she was hooked. Then she goes out and she bloody wins Ultraman Australia 2022. And she actually had Alice as a support crew. So she's crewed Buffalo Stampede, UTA, a few other organised events. I think she actually crewed her husband swimming the English Channel recently. She says that was the best one because there was no way he was speaking back. She crewed the amazing Rob Mason, who asked her and Alice to be part of his crew for the 2022 race. And both Alice and Jay take full credit for him winning that race. So she's then organised and crewed him to set the record running across the ACT as a charity run. And she says, watch this space. So that's Jay. Thanks very much, Jay, for joining us. And I'm sure a lot of people, as well as Julie and Alice, they'll find a hell of a lot of pearls of wisdom in what you've got to offer tonight. So here's Alice. Alice, she's a nurse, a mum. She took up running when she was 30. And that was just after she had a baby and a stroke. Wow. And she was told it was a bad idea to run a marathon. And that's exactly what she went and done. It was an interesting choice because she'd never really ran, but she completely fell in love with running and everything else it brings into her life. She first crewed for Jade when she won the Ultraman in 2022, and she enjoys every second of being a part of that experience of being a support crew member. And when offered by Rob to be part of the Coast To Kosci crew of 2022, she absolutely jumped at the chance. She just loves being part of the big events and amazing people doing seemingly crazy, fun things, which maybe sums up the Coast To Kosci. So thanks, Alice. Thanks, Jay. Thanks, Julie, for joining us. Greg and myself are just going to throw a few questions your way. And then for everybody else, we'll just open it up at the very end. And we'll see how we go. So we'll get 45 minutes. It'll be quite quick fire, machine gun-like style. We hope to extract as much information and hilarity out of these three ladies as much as possible. So we'll see how we go. So maybe I'll start off with Jay. First question, what do you personally get out of being part of a support crew?
Being a part of the support crew is one of the funnest things you'll ever do. It's going to the horse races and investing in that horse. You get to control it, you get to cheer them, you get to create the biggest adventure. And you get to do that in really challenging circumstances. And I think the reason all of you are here today is because you want to challenge yourself. And actually, we all think sitting on the beach, having a pina colada is idea of heaven, but actually it's pushing yourself. And that type 2 fun and that satisfaction you get for the rest of your life from those things you achieve. And you can do that crewing. You don't have to be out there running.
Brilliant. Julie?
Yeah, I agree with that. I also, not being an ultra runner, would suggest that you get the adventure part without the running, so there's less pain. But I just actually really love I love seeing the resolve of people and the community that brings. It's actually quite special. Yeah, I love it.
Thanks, Julie. Alice?
Yeah, similar to the other girls, it's the camaraderie of all being not just with your crew, but with all of the crews and cheering everybody on and seeing everybody reach their goals and, really achieve what they want to. It's a great day out. I think it's really important for the runners to see us all having a great time too, so they know they can just do their thing and we can do our thing. I think that's really important as well. So just have fun with it all.
Greg, you're on mute.
I think one of our differences that Coast to Kosciuszko brings, which a lot of people don't get until they've done it, is the support crew is with their runner for the whole event. Right? Yes, you don't get to see them maybe that first hour, maybe or so too. But after that, the support crew is with them for the whole event. So you get to experience the entire race as opposed to once every 25K or so at a checkpoint. So it's a really different type environment. In doing that and looking at that, say, Alice, given you're as a support crew, you're with the runner at the whole time at Coast to Kosciuszko. What are the top couple of things you see as essential ingredients for being a great support crew at Kosciuszko?
I suppose keeping up their mood, keeping an eye on them, hydration, nutrition, that's really important, because I think if your runner goes downhill, that's usually what the problem is. And just keeping that contact with them. And so I know that when we were with Rob, he just said as soon as he saw us, it just gave him a boost. And so not being too far away, but far enough that they can, get their rhythm and do their thing. That's what I would see as our role out there, is just keeping their mood up and keeping in contact with them where we can.
Thank you. And Jay, do you have any different lens to that?
Yeah, I think to be a really good crew, that planning starts well before the race. You need to get to know your athlete. You need to know their nutrition. You need to know their mindset, what their fears are, what they're most concerned about. And you need to have planned for everything that can go wrong before you even get out on that race course, because you don't want to be making stuff up as you go along. You need to have those contingencies ready. I mean, I say that, but obviously you'll still end up making things up as you go along. That's guaranteed. But it's about putting the homework in and getting the groundwork done before you get out into course.
Thanks, Jay. Julie, any further perspectives from you?
Yeah, I think also it's important to remember that it's like a team, it is a team effort, and it's not about one individual other than the runner, I guess, getting to the finish. But it is about, collaborating and having all those details planned out and then being really flexible and ready to adapt to whatever is thrown, I suppose, in the big super ultra marathon Coast to Kosci.
Thanks, Jules.
Thanks, Jules. Jay, you mentioned about getting into the kind of runner's mind and understanding what makes them tick and like doing all the planning up front. From your perspective, what did you encounter as the most challenging aspect of supporting your runner, and how did you handle it?
Now, this is always going to be a very personal thing, and each person on this talk call tonight who's crewing will encounter something totally different. I'm not sure you can even plan for that. Personally, what I found tricky in this particular race was when things start to go wrong. So for Rob, he won that event, but he was struggling with nutrition for a big section of that. And it was just working with the other team members and the crew, trying to work out how the hell we could get the calories into him to keep him moving to get to that finish line. You can't always plan for all those things in advance, but if you can just speak to your athlete first and find out what those problems are likely to be, it helps. And we knew that was something he struggled with.
Yeah. Spot on, Jay. Thanks. Julie, I mean, I probably know your answer, but just maybe you want to share it with everybody else. The most challenging logistical aspects of crewing Mr. Wallace, and how did you handle it?
Life. That comes with a whole different lens when you're crewing someone that you're quite intimate with, I guess, because you can probably get away with a lot more, saying a lot more, but you also get told things that you don't want to hear back. So, and also I also had the privilege of, nursing parts of his body that I probably wouldn't have had it been somebody else. So that was challenging. But
privilege. Would you call it privilege?
Pardon?
Touching Greg's feet is a privilege.
Oh, I was thinking, that was the challenge. Yuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was the challenging bit that you wouldn't normally do. Like there's a lot of things that, you probably step away from. But I think uh, the nutrition is actually quite a challenge. And sometimes it is also with knowing how far to push and when to pull back. I think there's a real fine line there. And there's got to be some serious communication between team and runner to try and work that balance out, whether that's pre-race, in the race, and then you're just sort of working with what you think and be prepared for a lot of possible expletives when you get it wrong.
We said what goes on course stays on course. And you have to expect the runners. It's like being with a 3-year-old. There will be tantrums, they'll be crying, then you just feed them again. Then they're crying, then you're feeding them again. And if
And
you're
they're
really
laughing.
unlucky, you might get the other end as well. So just be ready for all that to go down and don't take it personally. And I think a lot of people here tonight will be in Julie's position where they're with loved ones as well. And it's hard. And sometimes just to have someone who isn't as close makes it easier and perhaps to delegate some of those things to them. I mean, maybe not the feed, but sometimes the hard words and pushing them on, that can be useful.
Yeah, there was one point I know where Greg actually said to one of the crew, "Don't send Jules out. I don't want to talk to her. I know she's going to give me a pep talk. I want her to stay in the van." And you have to, like you said, you have to just have thick skin and go, "Yeah, that's what he wants. That's what he needs. It's about him, not me." So yeah, it's good.
Brilliant, ladies. Alice, anything else to add there?
The only thing I thought was a really good point too is what Jay said, that was really great. We did for Jay and for Rob is we basically went through all the things that could go wrong and worked backwards from there. So we had all of those plans ready to go because I think one of the trickiest things about Coast to Kosci is you're just so remote. There's no popping past and picking anything up. You kind of have to be ready out there because you are in the middle of nowhere all day. Well, for what felt like many days. And you need to be ready for that. And I think we kind of went from, okay, what can go wrong? Sunburn. Okay, work back from sunburn. What do we need in that situation? And I mean, I'm a nurse as well. So I came from a background where I can put that all into place. But I think what Jay said, that was a really good point, is that's how we worked out. That's how we were prepared for the day, is we worked out what, he might get an upset tummy. The runners often do. What can we do in those situations? Changes of clothes or medications or what we need. And we just worked everything backwards. And so we had it all there in preparation because you do have to be ready for anything out there because there is no woolies on that course to pop past.
Following on from that, Alice, and for those who've been to the Cathcart General Store and looked at the hunting equipment on sale, they're really sure that it's not the local woolies. What for this event were some of the items, a couple of things that were really unexpectedly useful during Coast to Kosci that you probably hadn't thought or wish you had?
Oh, Jay, can you think of things that
Bin liners. You just can't have enough bin liners.
Yes, for all the gross clothes and everything. That was a good point. And face wipes, like I know when I did Buffalo, I had clean washers all the time just for your face and things like that for your runner.
And
what other things?
Yeah,
sorry, Julie.
Like disposable gloves and toilet paper. That was really handy. Yeah.
Yeah. They're really good tips.
Yeah, toilet paper is an absolute must. I mean, if you're, I don't need to elaborate on that. Let's move on. So, Jay, I mean, like when we were kind of talking prior to this webinar, you shot me over a booklet, and I mean, it's just absolutely outstanding. And it kind of goes through like a checklist of things to think about. And if everybody's okay with it, well, I'm sure you will be in actual fact, is we might actually circulate that later on and you can kind of see the standards that were set when Rob Mason won it in 2022. And I'll give you an idea of the potential of, what an absolute difference a well-skilled, a well-drilled support crew makes to a runner. So I think you'll really get that from that document. But one thing I just wanted to focus on is like the strategies that you use to keep your runner motivated and focused when the going got tough.
Again, this is something you really need to understand your runner to get right. And it's conversations you need to have with your runner before the day. To give you an example, there's nothing I hate more than sympathy. People going, oh God, you look terrible. It's absolutely the last bloody thing you need to hear when you feel a bag of shite. So what you need to do is find out if they're planning on getting to the top 10, for instance. They'll need to know their paces. They'll need to know where the other races are. They'll want to know who competition is. If they just want to finish, you need to help them enjoy the beautiful scenery, get out there and be one with nature and just find out what does motivate them. And what you also need to understand is that's going to change. So what motivates someone early on when they're coherent is really different from what will motivate someone in the middle of the night when they're tired and incoherent. So make sure you can work for a whole repertoire of different things, from a healthy, happy athlete where it's going wrong, really right, to someone who's struggling, and make sure you know what they want to hear. And no one in the world ever wants to know distances at the start of a race. Don't do distances. They don't want to hear beep, one down,
Keeping
99 to
Garmin's,
go.
that's what I was going to say.
I think it was maybe on one of Rob's podcasts that he basically mentioned he didn't want to know the distance at all, and it wasn't really relevant until he hit Jindabyne. And then
Yeah, and
that's
we had to know that. So we had that written in our plan from the tree, from the dead tree. He wanted to start to know distance and pace. Up until then, he wanted to know what the weather was doing, what we were doing, good stories, things that would lift his spirits, things that would take him away from the running. But he didn't want to start racing till halfway. But he was racing, and that's not what everyone here to do. And for a lot of people, this is such a tough run, and just getting to that finish line is all you want to do. So just make sure you understand what your athletes are after and speak to them and just do exactly what they need.
That's brilliant. Alice, anything to add to that?
I think exactly all I could say is exactly what Jay has just said too. Just know your runner. I mean, going with Jay and being her support person, I knew, things like nutrition with Jay are very different. She eats everything. You barely have to prompt Jay to eat. Because she's actually just digging for food, and it's really easy to feed her. But Rob, it was everything. I had to be quite, gentle about getting him to keep up his nutrition, and I just had to not push him, and we just had to find something that would work and he felt good with at the time. And just knowing that about your runner, so that their experience is a great day, and you can keep on your targets when your little head, because I'm quite strict with my targets of the nutrition to keep it up, without pushing them, without them really needing to know that. And I just felt like just making sure you know your runner, exactly what Jay said. Know your runner really well and what their target is, and it's nobody's first run on Coast to Kosci. Everybody's going to know. Everyone's done some distance, so they're going to know what they need. And you might have to change that a bit on the day, but that's when you have to be a clever crewman and just work with the runner.
Thanks, Alice. Julie, any other strategies that you deployed? All good?
No, Greg's a different kettle of fish, I think. It is different. It's very different to because I knew him anyway, and he does go through very big highs and lows. So and nutrition was equally as difficult. So there was a lot of adjusting along the way. And I think that's the big key, is knowing, and then you start somehow and then it evolves sometimes. You have to just keep it adjusting.
Can I just say, it is a responsibility of the athlete to communicate this to the team prior to the race. So they need to tell the team what to do. Otherwise, they can't be upset when we're getting it wrong, because we'll be making it up. So sit down, write this down and explain it to them. Do a group meeting, just get it all clear. Because when you're racing, when you're out there running, you want to hand over all responsibility to your team. You don't want to be trying to control your crew. They should be helping you just to race. They should be facilitating that. So get out there and do the homework, any runners who are listening to this.
I think, did Rob say in one of his podcasts as well, Jay, that handing over that responsibility to his crew, that was the first time he'd ever done that in the race, and he reckons that was the game changer.
Mm.
Yeah, he did talk about that. We actually had to sit him down, and it was more of a wrestling it off him than a handing over of it. But actually, it is in a personal experience of doing that. It's a feeling of such relief to get rid of all those race nerves where you're worrying about the logistics. Just step away from that. You've got a lot of running to do. You've got plenty of worrying to happen. Concentrate on that. Don't worry about whether they've put enough sugars in your coffee at the second control point. That's not what this should be about. So
Yeah.
trust your crew. And a big part of that is before you get out there, planning and talking to them and getting that all down.
Communication. Mm.
Yeah, I think too with that, there's a very big difference between the person that wins Coast to Kosci, who's run that in a day, to the people that are coming through another,
Good point.
12 hours or more later, because they at some point aren't able to make decisions, and the crew has to take that on board. And you have to, even the plan that you might have started with, if that's dragging on for 30 hours, everyone's tired, and you do have to have a contingency for that as well. But what are you going to do at the end, and who's making those decisions? And, are you going to argue with the runner? Like, you do have to have, because it is difficult at that end point. I would say after that 24 hours, it's pretty tough.
So it almost makes sense, Julie, from what you're saying and Jay's saying and Alice, is you hand over that responsibility, or the runner hands over that responsibility from minute one.
Mm.
Yep.
Me years to realise that.
Yeah.
It's still hard to do.
Is Greg still misbehaving, Julie?
I know. To flip that around a little, we've actually touched on nutrition in a few different points along the way. To flip that away from the runner's nutrition,
Oh, yes.
how, as support crew, do you manage your own nutrition, given the earlier point of there's no Woolworths at Dalgety or at Cathcart or at Big Jack? So how do you manage your nutrition? Jules, how do you take care of that?
Well, I like to take my own food. So I pretty much plan my own food, and then usually have had made something for most other people. There's usually some sort of easy pizzas or something easy that when, everyone's getting tired, there's a lot of snacks. But it is about, again, planning the crew and making sure that everyone has some sort of break and is eating and drinking and hydrated and all that, because it's just as important that we're all slept, fed, and watered, so that we're all functioning and that we can make decisions and sensible decisions as well, and to be able to drive. So
Safely.
yeah.
Alice,
When
any
I was
other
crewing for
perspectives?
North Face 100, I saw this really funny thing where we were just cheering people on, and the whole crew was standing where they shouldn't have been. They were absolutely not allowed there, trying to give their athlete nutrition. And what had happened is they hadn't taken enough food, and they'd eaten all the athletes' food. So when they got to the control point, they had nothing to give their athlete. So then they were nearly risking disqualification for that runner, trying to hand them food. So do plan for your own food. You don't want to be a casualty, and you sure as hell don't want to get your athlete disqualified.
We always had two eskies. We always had one was specifically for a runner, and the other one's everyone else's food.
That's a great idea. Yeah,
Mm.
that's a great idea. And also, if you're pacing, make sure you take your own
Yep.
food if you're running too, because that you might not want to eat pizza or whatever if you're running for a couple of hours, and take your own nutrition as well. But yeah, that's really important. Jay and I had a lovely cup of tea somewhere in the back roads of somewhere, didn't we, Jay? Waiting for Rob.
Yeah, and warm, and something warm, like
Yeah,
the hot
thermos.
water and thermoses and stuff are important, because it
Take a
does.
thermos and pot noodles. That's super simple.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great idea.
Mm.
One common theme that's kind of come through from what we've asked, the questions around thus far and the responses we've received, is planning and planning and planning. Maybe I'll start with Julie. Can you give me an instance where things didn't go as planned, and what you did to resolve the issue and keep the runner on track?
Well, there's probably many, to be honest, especially in the early days. But Greg, and I'm only talking from Greg because he can be quite tunnel vision. He'd get quite focused on something, and like we were saying, he wasn't always happy to hand over the role of management. So there was often, I remember a few instances, he just wasn't keen to stop and change his gear. He just wanted to stay on the road. And so and we ended up having to let him because he was adamant. And he ended up with some really savage blisters. And because his clothes got so wet, shorts and feet. And that was actually really difficult. We then were taping him up in all sorts of areas, trying to get him to the end. So there are some things that you kind of can push on, and then other things you can't, and then you just sort of work it out. But I mean, that's through experience sometimes too for the runner. Like that was very early days when he just started running, so none of us were that clued up, and we didn't have these webinars. We didn't have any information at all.
And probably one of the most important thing there was actually taking the learnings from the previous race and then applying them in the next race. Yeah.
And sometimes just listening to your support crew.
That helps.
Alice? It can.
I can't think of one. Can you remind me of one, Jay?
Yeah, I think the one which,
smoothly.
and this is one you'll all face, is you can all make rough predictions at what time you think people are going to be getting to where.
Oh,
And
yes.
we ended up with
so
this.
much faster.
Yeah, Rob was just way quicker. It was inhuman. It was incredible, which meant we were trying to communicate ahead to team members who were going to swap in and out to get everyone there earlier. So make sure your communication with your whole team and how you're going to do that is very clear, and expect big time slippage. Not usually in that direction. Usually it will take longer.
Actually, I did do that to Greg on one of the Great North Walks. I can't remember where it was. And I thought he was going to be much slower. And I got a bit lost finding my way there. And he'd already gone through and he had no food. He was furious at me when I got wherever it was. Yeah. So it is, you only do that once, I think.
You only do that once.
Yeah.
Could lead to divorce if you're intimate with somebody.
Pretty.
I suppose to follow on from that, you're again touching this little theme coming through. Another one of those is communication and I suppose even roles. How do you manage? I'll probably throw to you first, Jules. How do you manage team dynamics within the support crew? With say three, where you got a pacer, a couple of people in the van. How do you manage team dynamics, and what are the best tips you've got for clear communication and teamwork?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, it's been we've sort of managed a fairly a crew that's had fairly well-defined roles. They're the ones that have worked the best, where you know who the pacer is. There's not a jostle for wanting to get out on the road and that's about, it's about having people who are there for the runner, not for their own self-interest, I guess. And there has been times where there's been a bit of that, but over the years. But I think same thing, that communication, that this person's doing that at this time and, this person's doing something else and it is, you need a crew that actually get on and clearly communicate with each other and also a little bit of initiative from each person is really important too. So, but I think also having like a crew chief, having one person who drives everything and then everyone else knows exactly where they're meant to be and what they're meant to be doing, what their role is. And then it generally runs pretty smoothly, I think.
Up to 46 hours in a van isn't a lot of fun if you don't get on.
No, that's true.
And then a lot of that's about choosing personalities, I think. That can be, that's a bit of trial and error at times because you can get it wrong.
Yeah, I agree with what Julia was just saying about having roles.
Yeah,
and actually, that's so important. And you need to know what those roles are going to be well before you go in and be prepared to do a few roles. So, for instance, driving isn't a job for one person to do if it's a 30K run. So they need to know what the roles of the driver are. And if you take over, you're checking petrol, you're looking for safe places to pull over and so forth. So understand what the roles are. Understand what each role entails and really understand who's doing what role. And we had quite a few people all changing in and out. And we had no problems with it, even though a lot of us hadn't done this before, because we knew if we went into the role of nutrition, we'd have a checklist with everything they're eating, and you just handed it out and you ticked it off. Or if you were driving, you knew that you'd be putting the hazards on, looking for safe places to pull over. If you were navigating, you weren't doing, the driver was never navigating. So there was no crossover. It was very clear. And that made it safer. It made it easy to change over. And it meant you could swap crew members in and out without there being problems, whether or not you like them or even worked with them before.
Yeah, and that was exactly my tip there as well. Define roles. And then if you do have multiple crews or some changeover, it's really clear handovers. I mean, I always do the nutrition role, which involves, often the medication, and I write down the times and write down our goal amounts, and we, keep that in check. And then I just hand that over to the person that jumps in my seat if I'm having a break or anything. And we've had no trouble at all, because I think it is quite clear. And also, we all get along. We came from a group that, like Julie said, is a bit of a personalities. We all do a lot of exercise together, so we know each other quite well. Or, sometimes we don't, but it all seems to just work quite cohesively if you're just focusing on your role. I mean, I'm not a driver. I'm not going to drive. I'm not going to put up my hand for driving. Nope to driving. Any other
But she's
roles
all
like
over the
driving?
feet, Julie. She's on your side with them.
Oh God, I did feet, Julie. I did feet too, and I'm not intimate.
Did you girls do any dry runs? Did you do any kind of role rehearsals or anything like that beforehand?
Yeah, we did. We went out.
Ultraman.
Yeah, we practiced aid stations actually is something you do need to practice because you need to do things like the leapfrog technique correctly and safely, understanding how to hand over food to your athlete as they're running, which side of the road to be on. And it was funny. It sounds really patronizing. And you're saying to people, how do you know how to hand off food to a running person? And they're like, how hard can it be? But you'll be absolutely amazed how wrong you can get it. And actually, one of the biggest tips I can give to all of you is keep your athlete moving. And if they're sitting at the van or the bus or the truck or whatever you've got, waiting for you to get your admin together, and they have to do that repeatedly, you're adding hours onto that race. So practice your aid stations, practice getting food out, practice packing your vehicle, make sure everything's working well. Don't try and work it out the first time on the race itself.
Yeah, and flasks. Have your bottles and your flasks ready, already filled, ready to go. Fill them up, have them ready so you can just pass them straight off to your athletes. There is, like Jay said, there's no fapping around when your athlete's ready to keep moving, because you want to, you really want to go with that and keep them going.
Yeah, and you think there's a long time. It's fairly busy, isn't it? Like you sit around a lot, but you're actually not. It's busy. You're constantly getting things, moving things and having the next thing ready. You've just handed out one thing and you're getting the next thing ready. So it is, it is about all that preparation. It's really important.
And we would do, sorry.
On you go, Jay.
We would do sit reps. So after every time we'd done a handover, we'd do a situation report. So we'd say, how's nutrition?
Yeah.
How's his health? Any requests from your athlete? What problems are coming up? What do we have to do at the next station? It takes you 5 seconds to do it. It means you're always planning ahead. And it means the next one goes smoothly as well.
And also, I think writing a lot of things down, like one of our guys, he'd bring his laptop and he had like a full spreadsheet, because you forget, you get tired and then you can't remember, did we give it to him at 10 o'clock? And if you have it all written down and you know exactly what you've done at what time, there's no question of whether you've doubled up or missed something.
It's my ticky chart, Jay. I have a ticky chart. It's everything's on there, and I tick it and I add it all up. And if I don't put it on there, it doesn't exist to me, because you're right. You're tired. You're distracted, and people are asking you things, and you're trying to communicate with everybody, and you're watching the road and the people, and it is busy. So I totally agree with you, Julie.
Yeah, and the great thing about a ticky chart is if you've got a doctor in there with writing that looks like an arthritic spider with constipation, the next person, when you hand over, still knows what's going on. Yeah. So Alice's ticky charts are the best.
I can share my ticky chart if anyone wants my ticky chart.
I have been asked by a support crew what time was my last time I did a wee. That was the biggest debate of discussion for about an hour. It was their job to work that out, not mine.
Meanwhile, we were gassing each other by farting too much in the support vehicles from eating all the rubbish we'd taken.
I'm sure there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
If you it's perhaps two different perspectives, and everything is often a learning opportunity. Whether that's about being more efficient, whether that's about increasing a runner pace, getting through the race earlier, taking less risk, whatever that is. And again, hindsight is a wonderful thing. Is there anything you'd wish you had done differently? And it can depend on the circumstance, or it doesn't have to be Kosciuszko, it can be a different race. Is there anything you'd wish you'd done differently to support your runner better? Jay, I'll ask you.
Oh no, we were perfect.
Yeah.
Um,
Rob does actually describe that as his dream race.
Still,
It-
you can always
you
do
know,
better. You can
Well,
always do
sometimes you
better.
do have golden races, and it was one of those. Honestly, I think there isn't. The only thing I would say is just expect a really poor signal. We didn't have a booster on the car, which I have had since for other things I've supported. You can hire them, you don't have to buy them. But expect poor reception. It's very rural, it's very isolated. And if you're communicating with family and friends, if you're communicating with other team members swapping in, or with with Greg and Mickey, letting them know if there's an emergency, you will need that signal. So I would suggest a booster for your car.
Julie?
I don't know, actually. Probably many things, but I think we didn't ever have a swap-in crew. Or maybe one or two people, but we didn't ever have like that. So, that in the early days would have been probably beneficial because you're going around the clock, you're pretty tired. So I think that just swapping roles, I think, with people so that you're getting a decent sleep or whatever. This is talking about, these are, runners at the end of the race rather than that first 24 hours. That's a big difference. There's a really big difference in crewing for that end to the front end, for sure, I think. Yeah. And having food, you got to have a lot more food.
And probably supporting that is where we tend to see most of the issues is the second half in the race, where people are tired, not just runners, support crew are tired, and perhaps the decision making isn't optimal.
Yeah.
Or is less considered, and that can create challenges and or safety risks, or just general discomfort and those sorts of things. So there's always things we can always work on, and I'm sure a number of the runners have their own little areas of improvement as well.
Yeah, we kind of spoke about this earlier on, and we mentioned community. So for all you first timers, those guys that have never crewed before at the Coast To Kosci, rest assured that you're not necessarily going to be out on your own, no matter how isolated you are. Because what you find is like support crews help other support crews who help other runners. And there's a real sense of community around there. But just definitely expect that, because that's just been a hallmark. It's been a staple diet of Coast To Kosci throughout the years. And, we're doing nothing to actually make sure that doesn't happen. We want to see that continue to happen all the time. So we're getting close to the end, and what I'd like to do is just ask one final question of these brilliant ladies. What advice, coming back to like newbies, what advice would you give to new people supporting a runner in this event for the first time? Maybe start with Jay.
Spend time with them well before the race and make sure you know exactly what your runner wants out of this race, and get to know what their highs and lows will look like. Every one of you who runs has highs and lows. You need to know what they're going to look like, how they want to get through them. Look at nutrition and just plan and plan and plan for every possible contingency, because you don't know what that race is going to throw at you. And when you're fatigued, and especially as Julie said, for the people at the end, If you already know the answers to those questions, it will make your life a downside easier.
Thanks, Jay. Julie?
Yeah, and I think also just to go in and enjoy the adventure, because it really is, and for it to be fun, you know, it is serious, but it is about no one but the runner, really. So it's about giving over everything to get that runner to the end, and yeah, just it's like the best camping trip you can ever have.
I don't want to steal your thunder, Alice, but I think you did mention the fun part as well. And
That's
if you're
exactly
having
what I
fun,
was
then
going
that's
to say,
I
Mickey. I was
or
going to say,
sorry,
have,
shut.
and you did steal my thunder.
Sorry.
I was going to say, have a great day, because that's the best thing you can do for your runner as well, obviously with them being your priority. But I know Rob said that he just ran along knowing that every time he saw us, we were singing and we were laughing and we were having a great day. So look after yourselves, pace yourselves. It's a long time. And, you know, as Julie said, especially when you've got the runners in the second half, it's a long, long time out there. But have a really great time. Do sing the songs, you know, make the jokes. Have a great day.
And can I just say one last thing? Don't forget to take photographs and record it.
Oh, and
Afterwards, it means so much to the athletes to see those pictures, to see those videos, because it's a really special event. So make sure you record that for them too, wherever you can.
And another tip is actually get your playlist sorted and have it downloaded before you get there,
Yeah.
because the internet drops out and you cannot do Apple Music, Spotify, it does not work. So you try to
Good
find
point.
your favorite song at a particular time and it's dead. So yeah, get your playlist sorted early.
Yep.
Any more final tips? Jesus, they're flowing. No? Anybody else get any questions? We've got a few minutes left.
And the pies are good. The pies are good at Cathcart. Get there early, because if you're a slow runner, you miss out on all the pies. So send your crew ahead, get the pies.
Do you want to mention Toowoomba Public School, Greg?
Yeah.
You're on mute, mate.
And look, Mickey mentioned earlier, our core values are community, humility, and resilience. We do look to try and support local communities where we can. We will be putting up in our socials about Toowoomba. The Toowoomba Public School is 26 kids. They put on a breakfast for us. They sell bacon and egg roll, paninis, muffins, coffees, other stuff. Great mugs done by the kids for about $10, $15 a pop. We're their biggest fundraiser of the year, and we're out of area. All right, so it's actually it's not the same parents at school doing the same work for fundraisers. So they are thrilled when we come through, and they go to a lot of effort. We encourage you to support them. Cash is a lot easier for them. They do take card as well, and we'll put up what the breakfast menu is beforehand. And please buy, and if you can, spend some money there as well. It's greatly appreciated, and they are really grateful. The best example of that is at last year's event, and I may have mentioned this last webinar, at around, I don't know, 18, 20K, giant tree came down on the road, blocked the road. Our first report back was support crews can't get through. And we initially, it was too early to ring council. We rang Toowoomba. Their school P&C guys were already on site with chainsaws cutting it up so we could get through. Yeah, small though, and the local community know we come through, and they're really grateful. So please, we encourage you to utilise the breakfast available there. It's great for support crews, and again, you get some great mementos from there as well. So please do that. Similarly at Cathcart, you know, they open up longer for us. It's the biggest day of the year. Not much happens in Cathcart. You'll realise that when you get there, but please, we encourage you to spend local if and where you can. Thanks, Mickey.
Yeah, thank you, Julie, Alice, Jay.
Welcome.
That was unbelievably good. And as I mentioned earlier, like Jay's produced this cheat sheet. I'll circulate that to everybody, and that's going to make you even better support crews going forward. So can I just you don't really do this in like videos, but can you put your hands together and just say thank you to Julie, Alice, and Jay?
Thanks. No problem.
Thumbs up stuff.
Lovely to meet you, Julie.
Hey.
Thanks, everyone.
Lovely to meet you.
Nikki, just before we close, Cindy, who's part of Lisa Sherman's crew, will be looking for a lift back from Jindabyne. There are a couple of other instances where a couple of people need to sort of get back pretty much straight after the event and are looking for opportunities to see if there's space in anyone's car when they're heading back to Sydney. Can I just ask you to keep an open mind about that? And we'll prospectively reach out across the event to try and help make that happen for anyone who has transport challenges. Thank you.
All right. The next time we'll see you is in November.
Good luck.
Thanks, Nikki. Thanks, Greg, for everything you guys do.
Yeah,
thank you. Cheers, everyone.
All the best, everyone.
Thanks
very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Start line.
Bye.